Scotch has a problem. For every bottle that earns its price, there are 5 that coast on packaging, age statements, and marketing budgets. I have spent years tasting my way through hundreds of them for this channel, and my shortlist keeps getting shorter. It is now 10 bottles long. 10 Scotches I would buy again without hesitation at full price for the rest of my life. Everything else is negotiable. These are the only 10 Scotches I will ever recommend, counting down to the one bottle I would defend against the entire industry. A quick word on how this list works before we start. Every bottle here had to clear 3 bars. The liquid has to justify the price with 0 excuses. The distillery has to be doing something you cannot get anywhere else, and I have to be able to pour it for a skeptic and watch their face change. You will notice a pattern as we go. Family ownership shows up again and again, and so do slow, inefficient, borderline irrational production methods that big corporate owners phased out decades ago because accountants hate them. That is not a coincidence. The bottles that survive on my shelf are almost always the ones where somebody chose flavour over throughput. No collector bait, no allocated unicorns you will never see, with one exception at number 1 that earns its place the hard way. Prices quoted are typical US shelf prices, and your local market may vary. Let us get into it. Number 10. Mortlach 12, the Wee Witchie. Mortlach is the whiskey your favourite blender does not want you to know about. This Dufftown distillery has been a backbone of the Johnnie Walker blends for a century, which means Diageo kept most of it locked away from single malt drinkers for decades. The house style is unlike anything else in Speyside. Mortlach runs 6 stills of completely different shapes and sizes that are not paired together, feeding a bizarre partial triple distillation the distillery calls 2.81 times distilled. Nobody fully agrees on the math, but everybody agrees on the result. A thick, meaty, savoury spirit that locals nicknamed the Beast of Dufftown. The history is just as odd as the process. Mortlach was the very first licensed distillery in Dufftown, a town that today holds 6 working distilleries and produces more malt whisky than anywhere else in Scotland. At one point in the 1830s, the building was sold, stripped of its equipment, and spent years operating as a brewery and then a church before whisky production returned. From holy water back to the water of life. There is a joke in there somewhere. The 12-year-old is named after the smallest still in the building, the Wee Witchie, and it matures in a mix of ex-sherry and ex-bourbon casks before bottling at 43.4%. You get dried figs, dark toffee, leather, and this strange savoury depth underneath, almost like glazed ham next to a fruitcake. It sounds wrong. It tastes brilliant. At around $50 to $60, it is the cheapest bottle on this list and the strangest, which is exactly why it stays. When a whiskey this weird survives a century inside a corporate blending machine that tells you the liquid was always too good to waste. Number 9, Aberlour 16. Everyone knows Aberlour for Arbunad, the cask-strength sherry cannon. The 16 is what happens when the same distillery decides to whisper instead. It spends a full 16 years split between ex-bourbon casks and Oloroso sherry butts, and the extra time sands off every rough edge without sanding off the character. Plums, raisins, honey, walnut, soft baking spice, all layered instead of shouted. Yes, it is bottled at 40%, and the enthusiast crowd will tell you that is a crime. Here is the thing though, this is the bottle I hand to people who say Scotch burns too much, and it converts them at a rate nothing else on my shelf can match. It usually sits between $90 and $120, which is fair money for a sherried 16-year-old from a distillery this consistent. Compare that with what a certain famous sherry-obsessed brand charges for a 12-year-old wearing prettier packaging, and the math gets uncomfortable fast for them, not for you. 16 years of maturation is expensive real estate inside a warehouse, and Aberlour is one of the few names still selling that time at a sane price. An elegant Speyside that asks nothing of you and gives plenty back. Sometimes that is the whole assignment. Number 8. Old Pulteney 18. Old Pulteney gets made in Wick, a fishing town so far up the northeast coast that for much of its history you could only reach it by sea. The distillery has been there since 1826 and it still uses worm tub condensers, the old coiled copper pipes sitting in cold water outside. Fewer than 20 distilleries in Scotland still bother with them because they are slow and inefficient. They also produce a thicker, oilier, more characterful spirit, and that is the trade old Pulteney refuses to give up. The 18 starts in second fill ex-bourbon casks, then moves into first fill Spanish oak that previously held Oloroso sherry, and it comes out at a proper 46%. The second fill bourbon wood matters here. It lets the distillery character breathe for years instead of drowning it in fresh oak, and then the Spanish casks arrive late to drape sherry over the top like a coat. Chocolate, honeyed spice, orange peel, and this unmistakable salty air running underneath everything, like the harbour got bottled along with the whiskey. It has been stacking gold medals for years, including at the World Whiskies Awards, and at roughly $120 to $150, it undercuts nearly every famous 18-year-old on the shelf while outdrinking half of them. A certain Orkney 18 with heather on the label charges considerably more for a similar coastal sherry idea. I know which harbour my money sails from. Number 7. Tomatin 18. Here is a fun piece of history. In the 1970s, Tomatin was the largest malt distillery in Scotland, running 23 stills and pumping out oceans of spirit for blends. Then the whiskey market collapsed in the 1980s, the company went under, and a distillery built for volume had to relearn how to survive on quality. Its new owners cut the working stills from 23 down to 12, slowed everything down, and spent decades rebuilding Tomatin as a single malt operation that answers to drinkers instead of blenders. The 18-year-old is the proof the rebuild worked. And honestly, it might be the single best argument on this list that a distillery's past does not have to be its future. It matures in American oak before finishing in first fill Oloroso sherry butts, and it arrives at 46% non-chill filtered natural colour. What you get is a sherried Highland malt with tropical fruit hiding inside it. Pineapple and mango on the nose, then dark chocolate, orange, toffee, and gentle spice on the palate. The absurd part is the price. Depending on where you shop, this 18-year-old sherried single malt costs between $75 and $100. There are 12-year-olds from famous names charging more than that for less whiskey. If value had a face on this list, it would be this bottle. Number 6. Glengoyne 18. Glengoyne sits on the boundary between the Highlands and the Lowlands, and the distillery loves telling you that the spirit is distilled on the Highland side, while the warehouses across the road technically sit in the Lowlands. Cute story. The real story is what happens inside the still house. Glengoyne runs its spirit stills at what it claims is the slowest rate in Scotland, dries its barley with air instead of peat, and lets copper contact do the heavy lifting. The result is one of the cleanest, fruitiest spirits in the country, which then gets buried in a generous helping of first fill sherry casks for 18 years. Red apples, marzipan, ripe melon, walnuts, warm spice, Seville orange marmalade. It drinks like autumn in a glass, bottled at 43%. The 18 joined the range back in 2012, replacing a much-loved 17-year-old. And it has quietly become the benchmark for what slow, unpeated, sherry-driven Highland whiskey should taste like. It took a double gold at the San Francisco World Spirits Competition, and while the price has crept up toward $150 in some markets, patience this expensive to produce was never going to stay cheap. This is the unpeated sherried 18 I recommend when someone wants elegance over muscle, and the one I pour on the nights when I do not want the whiskey to fight me. Number 5. GlenDronach 15, The Revival. GlenDronach was founded in 1826 in a valley whose Gaelic name means Valley of the Brambles, and brambles is exactly what the whiskey tastes like. The distillery went silent from 1996 to 2002, and when it came back, the 15-year-old was named The Revival to mark the return. Then, in a twist of pure irony, The revival itself ran out of stock in 2015 and vanished for 3 years before master blender Rachel Barry brought it back in 2018. A revival of the revival. You could not script it better. The whiskey matures in Pedro Jimenez and Oloroso sherry casks from Andalusia, resting in old-fashioned earthen-floored dunnage warehouses, and gets bottled at 46%, non-chill filtered. Maraschino cherry, ripe blackberry, dark chocolate, fig, and manuka honey, with a long, spiced finish that refuses to leave. Whiskey Advocate named it one of the top whiskies of the year when it returned, and at around $110 to $130, it delivers more sherry character per dollar than bottles twice the price. Put it next to the famous Sherry Oak 12 that everyone gifts at Christmas, and the comparison is almost unfair. 3 extra years, higher strength, no chill filtration, twice the intensity. If you love dark, rich, dessert-adjacent Scotch, this is the one, and it is the bottle on this list I replace most often because it keeps emptying itself. We are halfway into the heavyweights now, and before we hit the top 4, if this list has already saved you from one bad purchase, hit subscribe. I go through the comments on every video, so if your personal never let me down bottle did not make the cut, put it down there and make your case. The top 4 is where the arguments really start. Let us settle them. Number 4, Bunnahabhain 18. Bunnahabhain comes from Scotland's most famous whiskey island, the one every peat freak worships, and it commits the ultimate act of rebellion by being completely unpeated. While its neighbours chase smoke, this distillery on the island's remote northeastern shore matures its spirit in sherry casks and lets the sea do the seasoning. The 18-year-old is the finest expression of that stubbornness. Credit where it is due. Back in 2010, the distillery relaunched this bottle, raised the strength to 46.3%, dropped the artificial colouring, and ditched chill filtration, at a time when plenty of bigger names were moving in the opposite direction. It pours deep mahogany and drinks like a Spanish bodega with a sea view. Figs, prunes, roasted nuts, dark chocolate and toffee, all wrapped in a faint coastal saltiness that no mainland sherry bomb can fake. That salt and sherry combination is the entire reason this bottle exists on my list. It runs about $150, sometimes less, in the UK, and it embarrasses several far more famous sherried 18-year-olds that cost the same or more. The label carries a tartan-capped helmsman searching for home, which feels right because this is the whiskey I come home to when peat fatigue sets in. Island character without a single wisp of smoke. Nothing else does this trick this well. Number 3, Ardbeg Corryvreckan. Named after one of the largest whirlpools on Earth, the churning strait just north of the distillery's island that nearly drowned George Orwell and his son during a badly planned boat trip. Ardbeg looked at that swirling death trap and thought, yes, that is the branding. Honestly, fair. Remember that Ardbeg itself nearly became a ghost. The distillery shut down in 1981 during the industry collapse, limped through the following decade with only patchy production, and closed again in 1996 before new owners bought it in 1997 and rebuilt it into the icon it is today. Every drop of modern Ardbeg exists because somebody refused to let the place die, and Corryvreckan is that survival instinct in liquid form. It started life in 2008 as a members-only release for the Distilleries Committee before demand pushed it into the permanent range a year later. Corryvreckan is heavily peated Ardbeg matured in a combination of ex-bourbon casks and virgin French Limousin oak, bottled at a serious 57.1%, non-chill filtered. The French oak is the secret weapon here. It layers dark berries, black pepper and espresso over the tar, smoke and sea spray, so instead of a one-note peat blast, you get a storm with structure. Blackcurrants and cracked pepper crashing into creosote and seaweed, then a finish that runs on for minutes. At around $90 to $100, it is one of the best pound-for-pound peated whiskies money can buy, and the bottle I reach for when someone says they have already tried everything smoky. They have not tried this. Number 2, Glenfarclas 105. In 1968, George Grant bottled a cask of Glenfarclas at full natural strength as a Christmas gift for family and friends. That gift became the first commercially available cask-strength single malt in the world, and the industry has been copying the idea ever since. The name comes from the old British proof measurement, 105 degrees proof, which works out to a monstrous 60%. Here is the detail I love. Glenfarclas does not water this down to hit 60. They select casks from the warehouse and marry them together so the batch lands at exactly 60% naturally, no water added. That is a distillery showing off, and they have earned the right. The Grant family has owned Glenfarclas since 1865, when John Grant bought the place for £512, and 6 generations later they still run direct-fired stills, some of the largest in Speyside, fed by water off the heather slopes of Ben Rinners, and mature everything in Oloroso sherry casks from Jerez. While competitors sold out to conglomerates one by one, the Grants kept the keys, kept the flames under the stills, and kept prices honest. The 105 hits you with plum pudding, hazelnut, espresso, dark caramel, and drying oak, and it takes water beautifully, unfolding new layers with every drop. At around $90 to $110, you are buying cask-strength sherried whiskey from one of the last true family distilleries in Scotland. That combination is nearly extinct. Treasure it. Number 1, Springbank 15. There was never any suspense about the distillery. Springbank is the most complete whiskey operation in Scotland, and it is not close. It is the only distillery in the country that malts 100% of its own barley on traditional malting floors, and every single step, from malting to milling to distilling to maturing to bottling, happens on one site in Campbelltown. A town that once held more than 30 distilleries and called itself the whiskey capital of the world, now down to 3 survivors, with Springbank as the beating heart. Founded in 1828 and in the hands of the Mitchell family for the better part of 2 centuries, it is still run by their descendants, still doing almost everything by hand. The place runs 3 different house styles through the same still house. Longgrow, which is heavily peated, Hazelburn, which is triple distilled and unpeated, and Springbank itself, lightly peated and distilled 2.5 times, splitting the difference in the most Campbelltown way possible. The 15 is the sherried expression of that stubbornness, matured in sherry casks and bottled at 46%. Brine, dried fruit, tobacco, leather, walnut, toffee, and a curl of gentle smoke underneath, all wearing that unmistakable, oily, slightly funky Campbelltown texture no other region can imitate. It is widely considered one of the best sherried whiskies in Scotland, and I consider it the single best answer to the question of what Scotch is supposed to taste like. Now the honest caveat. Demand for Springbank has exploded, and this bottle can be hard to find at its fair price, which sits around £120 to £140 in the UK. In the US, shelf prices are often marked up well beyond that, and I will not pretend otherwise. My advice is simple. Do not pay flipper prices, but if you ever see it at retail, buy it on the spot and ask questions later. Some bottles are worth the hunt. This is the one. So that is the list. 10 bottles, 1 shelf, no regrets. Notice what they have in common. Family ownership, weird stills, slow methods, honest strength, and liquid that carries the whole argument without a marketing department pushing from behind. That is what your money should be buying. And notice what is missing. Not one bottle here trades on a celebrity endorsement, a crystal decanter, or a limited edition sticker. The whole game of premium Scotch marketing is convincing you that scarcity equals quality. And the 10 bottles we just walked through are the counter-argument. Available, honestly priced, and better than half the trophies locked behind glass. Buy whiskey to drink it. The shelf will thank you, and so will your wallet. If this helped you figure out where your next bottle is coming from, consider subscribing, and I will see you in the next one.